The bell above the door of Doyle's diner gave a small, tired jingle as the afternoon light slanted through the dusty windows. It was the kind of place that people drove past 100 times before ever noticing it, a quiet roadside spot on the edge of Chicago, 40 miles from the shine and the shadows of the city, where the coffee was strong, the pies were homemade, and nobody asked questions about the cars parked outside. At a booth near the window sat a man who did not belong to the place. Damien Marchetti was tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a black wool coat that probably cost more than the diner made in a month. His dark hair was combed back, showing a face carved by sleepless nights and quiet violence. He held a white ceramic cup in both hands, and the coffee inside had gone cold more than an hour ago. Across from him, swinging her small legs under the table, sat a little girl in a pale blue dress and scuffed Mary Janes. Lily Marchetti was 6 years old, with soft brown curls pulled back by a ribbon and eyes the color of a winter sky. She was pushing a fork through a slice of apple pie, not really eating it, just drawing slow circles in the cinnamon. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then Lily set her fork down and looked up at her father. "Daddy," she said, her voice no louder than the hum of the refrigerator behind the counter. "Why doesn't Mommy come home anymore?" Damien went very still. He had faced men with guns. He had ordered things that would keep other men awake for the rest of their lives. But this small voice, this small girl, had always been the one thing capable of cutting through the armor he wore. He swallowed. He opened his mouth. No sound came. Lily watched him carefully, the way children watch a glass of milk that is tilting toward the edge of a table. Then she spoke again, softer this time, as if she had been practicing the question for a long time in her head before daring to say it out loud. "Did Mommy get mad?" she asked. "Because you work with bad men?" Something inside Damien's chest cracked so quietly no one else in the world could have heard it. He looked at her, really looked at her, and for a moment he wasn't seeing his daughter at all. He was seeing those same winter sky eyes on a different face, in a different life, across a candlelit dinner 2 years and a world ago. Behind the counter, a woman who had been wiping down the same glass for the last minute suddenly stopped moving. Her hair was pulled into a tight, unflattering bun. Thick, black-rimmed glasses sat low on her nose. She wore a plain gray apron over a plain gray shirt, and she kept her face turned slightly downward, the way people do when they have spent a long time trying not to be noticed. But the small hand holding the dish towel had gone white at the knuckles. She did not turn around. She did not breathe. Because she knew that voice. That impossible, beloved, 6-year-old voice. At the booth, Lily tilted her head and pointed with one small finger toward the counter. "I like her, Daddy," she said brightly, the heavy question already forgotten in the way only a child can forget one. "She gave me extra fries, and she called me honey." Damien did not look toward the counter. He kept his eyes on his daughter, because looking anywhere else felt, in that moment, like a failure he could not afford. "Lily," he said, and his voice came out rougher than he intended. He cleared his throat and started again. "Mommy didn't get mad at you. Mommy never got mad at you. Not once. Do you understand me?" Lily nodded slowly, the way she always did when she was listening, but not quite believing. "It wasn't Mommy's fault," Damien said. "And it wasn't your fault. It was Daddy's fault." Somewhere behind his ribs, a memory opened like a door he kept trying to nail shut. 2 years ago, 11 o'clock at night, the Calumet Bridge. He had been in a meeting when the call came. He remembered dropping the phone, remembered running, remembered the way the red and blue lights painted the underside of the bridge as he drove faster than the road was built for. And then the wreck, a black SUV, twisted open like a can. Still hissing, still burning, metal peeled back in shapes that had no business existing. He had dropped to his knees on the wet asphalt, and a fireman had tried to hold him back, and he had not cared. He had not cared about anything after that for a very long time. He blinked, and he was in the diner again, with the smell of coffee and cinnamon, and his daughter watching him. "Daddy wasn't strong enough to keep Mommy safe," he said, and he chose each word the way a man chooses where to step in a minefield. "Daddy picked the wrong kind of work, and some bad people did something very bad, and Daddy couldn't stop them in time." Lily's legs had stopped swinging under the table. "But it's not because Mommy didn't love you," he said, and now his voice was steadier, because this part was the only part he had ever been absolutely sure of. "She loved you more than anything in this whole world, more than me, more than herself. Do you understand?" "I understand," Lily whispered. She was quiet for a moment. She traced a circle on the table with her finger. Then she looked up, and the question she asked next was the one he had been running from for 2 years. "Daddy," she said, "do you still love Mommy?" Damien's hand tightened around the cold coffee cup. The porcelain was thin. For a second, he thought it might break in his grip. He tried to answer. He tried twice. The words sat in his throat like something too large to pass. He lowered his head. His shoulders, which had carried a crime family and a grief and a lie, shook once, just once, and stilled. Every single day, he whispered, and he did not look up as he said it. Every single day, Lily, for 2 years. He did not hear the tray fall. He felt it. A sharp metallic clatter from behind the counter, loud enough that the few other customers turned their heads. A ceramic bowl met the tile floor and exploded into white pieces. Soup, pale and steaming, spread in a slow, uneven pool across the black and white linoleum. Damien's head came up. The waitress with the tight bun and the heavy glasses was standing absolutely still, one hand braced on the counter, the other hanging empty at her side. Her face had gone the color of paper. She was not looking at the mess on the floor. She was looking at him. For a moment, no one in the diner moved. Then Damien did something he had not done in a restaurant in 20 years. He stood up and walked toward the counter. The old Damien Marchetti, the one who had built his empire brick by brick and body by body, would have sat in that booth and let a woman he did not know clean up a mess she had made. That was what people like him did. That was what people had been taught to expect. But the man standing up from the booth today was not that man. He had not been that man for 2 years. He crossed the black and white tiles in 4 long strides, crouched down beside the spreading puddle of soup, and began to gather the pieces of the broken bowl into his palm. "Daddy!" Lily slid out of the booth and hurried after him, her small shoes pattering on the floor. She stopped a few feet away, watching with wide, curious eyes. "Stay back, honey," Damien said. "There's glass. It's ceramic," a voice said quietly. He froze. The waitress was already kneeling on the other side of the spill, her head bent low, her hair still in that severe bun, her hand reaching for the same jagged piece he was reaching for. Their fingers met on the tile. He felt it before he understood it. A shape, a warmth, the particular way a thumb brushed against a knuckle. There are things a body remembers that the mind has not allowed itself to think about for a very long time. He stopped breathing. Slowly, slowly, she lifted her head. The glasses, the bun, the apron, none of it mattered. The eyes that looked up at him were the color of a winter sky, the exact color his daughter's eyes were, and the man who had faced bullets without flinching felt the floor drop out from under him. "Elena," he whispered. The word came out like a prayer spoken by a man who had stopped believing in prayers. She moved before she thought. She pushed herself up and turned toward the kitchen door, half stumbling, her hand already reaching for the swinging door as if she could disappear through it the way she had disappeared 2 years ago. Damien rose faster. His hand closed around her wrist. He did not squeeze. He did not pull. His fingers were trembling against her skin, like a man touching something he was afraid would burn him, or shatter, or prove not to be there at all. "Please," he said. His voice broke on the word. "Please, don't walk away. Not again. Please, just let me know I'm not losing my mind." She stood with her back to him, her shoulders rising and falling too fast, and she did not answer. At their feet, a small hand slipped into hers. Lily was looking up, her head tilted, her face full of the honest bewilderment only a 6-year-old can carry. "Miss," she said softly, "why are you crying?" The waitress looked down. She had spent 2 years training herself not to look at this child. She had avoided newspapers. She had avoided parks. She had taught herself to glance away from little girls in pale blue dresses the way other people looked away from the sun. But now that small hand was holding hers, and those winter sky eyes were looking up. Something inside her, the thing she had held together with wire and willpower for 730 days, finally gave way. Her knees buckled. She went down onto the wet tile without a sound, and she pulled the little girl against her chest, as if she had been drowning for 2 years and had only just remembered how to breathe. The kitchen door swung open. Hank Doyle was in his 60s, with a white beard, flour on his forearms, and the kind of steady blue eyes that had seen enough of the world to recognize a private moment when one was happening in the middle of his diner. He stood there for half a second, taking it in the broken bowl, the pale soup, the trembling woman on the floor holding a little girl she was not supposed to be holding, and the man in the expensive coat staring down at both of them like he was watching the dead walk. Hank did not say anything to them. He turned his head toward his wife, who had come out from the back holding a clipboard, and he said, very quietly, "Margaret, lock the door, flip the sign. We're closed for the day." Margaret Doyle looked at the floor, then at Elena, then at the little girl. She did not ask a single question. She simply walked to the front of the diner and turned the bolt. Hank led them to the back booth, the one hidden from the street by a tall bookshelf of paperbacks and salt shakers shaped like chickens. He set down 3 mugs of coffee that no one would drink, and then he left them alone, because some things are not for strangers. Elena sat with her back against the wall. She had not taken off the apron. Her hands were folded in her lap, too tightly, like she did not trust them to stay still. She looked at the table. She looked at her coffee. She looked at Lily in the booth beside her. She did not look at Damien. 2 years, he said. His voice was not the voice she remembered. It was quieter, more broken. A man's voice, but cracked down the middle, as if something very important inside of it had never been repaired. "You've been alive," he said. "For 2 years." Elena finally lifted her eyes, just for a second, and what she saw in his face made her look away again. "I watched her grow up in photographs from across the street," she whispered. "I saw her lose her first tooth through a chain-link fence. I watched her start school from a parked car 3 blocks away." Her voice broke. 2 years. "I burned down 3 organizations looking for who did it," Damien said. His hands were flat on the table now. He was speaking to the wood. "I killed men, Elena. I killed men who had nothing to do with it because I had nothing else to do." I know," she said. "I read the news every day, every morning. I knew what you were doing." He closed his eyes. Beside her, Lily had been very quiet, watching them the way a child watches adults speak a foreign language. And then, without warning, she did what children do. She climbed. She crawled onto Elena's lap as if it were her favorite chair in a house she had lived in her whole life. She settled her small weight against Elena's chest. She reached up and placed one warm little palm against Elena's cheek. "You're warm," Lily said, wonderingly. Are you, Elena?" made a sound that was not quite a word. She pressed her face into her daughter's hair and broke. Damien turned his face toward the window. His jaw worked. He did not let himself look. "Daddy said, Mommy went to heaven." Lily whispered against Elena's collar. "But you don't look like an angel." She tilted her head back and studied Elena's face, her small brows drawn together in the serious way of a child working out something important. "You look more like the mommy in the pictures." Elena held her daughter for a long time before she could speak again. When she finally did, she spoke against Lily's hair, as if it were easier to tell the story to a child than to the man across the table. "I was driving home from my mother's house," she said. "You remember. I went every Sunday." Damien remembered. He remembered everything about that week, frame by frame, the way a man remembers the last time he saw the sun. "It was late," Elena said. "Almost 11. I was on the Calumet Bridge. My phone rang. It slipped off the passenger seat and went under. I didn't want to stop, but it kept ringing, and I thought it might be you." Her voice snagged there. She kept going. "I pulled over onto the shoulder. Put on my hazards. Leaned down to reach under the seat." She lifted her head. Her eyes were dry now. There is a point past crying where a person simply describes things. "That's when I saw it," she said. "Saw what?" "A small metal box," she said, taped to the underside of the passenger seat, about the size of a paperback book. There was a little red light on the side of it, blinking, slow at first, then faster. Damien's hands had gone, still on the table. "I'd never seen a bomb in my life," Elena said. "But I knew. I don't know how I knew. Maybe because of who you were. Maybe because that little red light didn't belong under the seat of my car. I just knew." She drew a breath. "I didn't think. I didn't close the door. I didn't grab my purse. I shoved the door open and I ran. The guardrail on that bridge is low. Did you know that? It was always too low." She almost smiled. "I went over it the way I used to jump off the dock at my grandmother's lake in the summer. Only it wasn't summer. And it wasn't the lake. The river," Damien said. "Maybe 4 meters down," she said. "Maybe less. The water was so cold it felt like being hit with something. I went under, and when I came up, I was already being carried. The current was strong that—" "You remember there had been rain?" "Yes. I counted 8 seconds," she said, "and then I heard it." Her voice stayed flat, but her hand, without thinking, had begun to stroke Lily's back in slow, careful circles. The whole sky went orange. I saw a piece of the guardrail turning end over end against the clouds. I went under again after that. She did not speak for a while. "The river took me almost 2 miles, she said. "There is a bend where it widens, where old men fish at night for catfish." Hank was there with a lantern. He saw a shape in the water. He waded in, and he pulled me out. From the far corner of the diner, without looking over, Hank Doyle was quietly refilling a salt shaker and pretending he could not hear a single word. "2 broken ribs," Elena said. Concussion. I don't remember the first 3 weeks at all. When I started remembering again, I remembered one thing before I remembered my own name. Damien looked up. I remembered, Elena said, that only one person in the world knew I was on that bridge that night. Damien waited. Marcus, she said. Marcus Kane was the only one I told. The name sat on the table between them like a loaded gun. Damien did not move. He did not blink. A muscle worked once in his jaw, and then he was still again, in the way only very dangerous men can be still. Go on, he said. Elena lowered her chin to the top of Lily's head. The little girl had gone quiet in her lap, listening the way children listen when they do not understand the words but understand that the words matter. When I woke up, Elena said, I was in Margaret's guest room upstairs. There was a quilt on the bed with blue stars on it. I remember staring at those stars for hours before I could remember my own name. I had no phone, no purse, no shoes, nothing. Why didn't you call me? Damien asked. His voice was careful. He was trying very hard not to let it sound like an accusation. I was going to. But the television was on downstairs, she said. Hank was watching the evening news, and the woman on the screen was saying my name. She looked up. Elena Marchetti, wife of reputed crime boss Damien Marchetti, killed in a vehicle explosion on the Calumet Bridge late Sunday night. Authorities report that the body has not yet been recovered. Damien closed his eyes. I sat on the top of the stairs, Elena said, and I listened to a newscaster announce that I was dead. And then I understood something. If the person who put that bomb in my car was close enough to you to know where I would be that night, then the person who put that bomb in my car was in your house, in our house. And the moment I called you, the moment I walked back through that front door, he would know. And he would try again, Damien said. He would try again, Elena agreed. Only next time he would not miss. And next time, he would not stop with me. Her hand tightened very slightly on Lily's shoulder. I couldn't take that chance, she said. Not with her. For a long moment, the only sound in the diner was the soft hum of the freezer. The river runs out to Lake Michigan, Elena said. When they didn't find my body, I knew they would tell themselves the current had carried me into the lake. That was the story. That was the only story that kept her safe. So I let them have it. She rolled one shoulder, gestured at the apron, at the gray shirt, at the tight, unflattering bun. Hank and Margaret gave me work. The diner is 40 miles from the city. No one from your world has ever walked through that door. Not until today. The name on your name tag said Ellie, Damien said quietly. Ellie Harper, she said. Margaret's grandmother's name, actually. I dyed my hair, bought the cheapest glasses I could find, stopped smiling at strangers. You'd be surprised how much of a woman disappears when she stops smiling. Damien was not surprised. He had been looking at her for an hour, and he had almost walked past her twice. There is a reporter, Elena said. Rachel Kim. She writes for the Tribune. She called the explosion an organized crime hit the day after it happened, and then she kept calling it that even when everyone else stopped. I reached out to her 6 months in. She's been feeding me what she finds. I've been feeding her what I remember. She met his eyes for the first time. I was close, Damien. I was almost there. One more piece of evidence, and I would have had a name. Damien looked at her for a long time. You say you were close, he said slowly. And today, of all days, I walk through your door. Today, of all days, Elena said. Her voice had gone quiet again. How did you get here, Damien? He almost laughed. It came out as a small, tired breath instead. I didn't plan it, he said. Please understand that. If I had known, if I had even suspected, I would not have brought her near you. Not until it was safe. I know. We went to the cemetery, he said. St. Boniface. 3 miles down the road. I go twice a year. On the day, you on that day, and on today. Elena's hand had stopped moving on Lily's back. You go on my birthday, she said. I go on your birthday. She looked at him. He did not look away this time. You remembered, she whispered. Every year. He reached for his coffee cup, realized it was still cold, set it down again. His hands needed something to do. We left flowers, he said. Yellow ones. You used to say roses were a man's apology, and yellow flowers were a woman's answer. I never really understood it. I just started bringing yellow ones. Elena pressed her lips together very hard. Coming back, the car ran out of gas. It was my fault. I'd been thinking about other things. The station a mile up the road had a sign out pumps under repair, so we kept rolling. Lily was hungry. She said she could smell pie, which was impossible because the windows were up. But But she always could, Elena said softly. She always could. Damien agreed. And then we came around the bend, and there was a little hand-painted sign, blue letters, Doyle's Diner, best apple pie in Cook County. In Elena's lap, Lily stirred and looked up. Mommy liked apple pie the best, she offered, as if she were only helping to finish a story. Daddy said so. In the picture on the piano, she's eating it. Elena made a sound that was half a laugh and half something broken. She bent and kissed the top of her daughter's head, hard, and stayed there. Today is my birthday, she whispered against Lily's hair. Nobody at the table had said it yet. Today is my birthday, Damien. Damien could not answer her. He looked away, at the window, at nothing. In the far corner, Hank Doyle was pretending to count napkins. He cleared his throat, and when he spoke, it was almost to himself. There's no such thing as coincidence, son, he said quietly. Some things just take their time finding their way back to where they belong. For a while, no one spoke. Then Damien leaned forward. The old certainty crept back into his voice, the one that had run a family, a business, a war. Come home with us, he said. Tonight. Right now. I'll have 4 men on the door before sunrise. I'll move you both to the estate in Wisconsin by morning. No one will touch you. I swear it on my life. Elena shook her head before he had finished speaking. No, she said. Elena, Damien, listen to me. Her voice was low, steady, and more frightening than tears. If I walk back through your door tonight, the man who tried to kill me will know within an hour that he failed, and he will not come for me again. She looked down at the little girl in her lap. He will come for her. The word hung in the air between them. Her, Lily, the only thing in the world they still had, both of them, even when they had lost each other. Damien sat back against the booth. For a moment he looked, truly looked, like a man who had been awake for 2 years straight. Then tell me, he said. Tell me what you know. Elena lifted Lily gently and set her down on the bench beside her. She smoothed her daughter's hair and reached for the battered leather tote bag she had carried into work that morning. Whoever placed that device, she said, had access to our garage, our gate, our keys. It was not a stranger, Damien. It was family. He was already counting. She watched him do it. 4 people, she said. That is what it comes down to. 4 people who could have walked up to my car that week and done what they did. You, Eric Dalton, the driver, Rosa. Eric is dead. I know. A year ago last March. In a job that was reported as a robbery gone wrong. It wasn't. I didn't think so either. And Rosa has been with my family since I was 9 years old, Damien said. She raised me more than my mother did. She would cut off her own hand before I know, Damien. Her voice was gentle now. I crossed her off the list a year ago. She laid a folded sheet of paper on the table, newsprint lines, handwritten notes in the margins, a photograph paperclip to the top. That leaves 1. He did not have to open it. He knew. His hand went flat on the paper anyway, as if pinning it to the table. Marcus took a bullet for me 3 months ago, he said, and his voice was rough. In the shoulder, 6 inches from his heart. He was in the hospital for 2 weeks. His sister flew in. I sat by that bed every night, Elena. Every single night. I know. Then how because Marcus Kane, she said, does not exist. Damien went still. She opened the paper for him. A photograph. Younger. Thinner. The same eyes. Rachel found a boy in a county records office in New Orleans, Elena said quietly. His real name is Marcus Belrose. 2nd son of the Belrose family. Your father wiped that family off the map in the summer of 2003. You were what, 17? 18? You probably didn't even know the names. I remember the night, Damien said. I remember my father coming home. There were supposed to be no survivors. There was one, 20 years old. He was in the basement when the house went up. He came out of the rubble 3 days later and walked away into another state. He changed his name. His face, some of it, his papers. He spent 15 years becoming someone you would trust. Damien was no longer looking at the paper. He was looking at something only he could see, and the things he was seeing were arranging themselves into a shape he had never been willing to see before. The bullet, he said softly. Staged, probably. Low caliber, clean angle. A man who would put a bomb under your wife's car would put a hole in his own shoulder to earn 2 more years of your trust. The Detroit deal last summer. He handled the logistics. The Russians in December. The shipment we lost off the pier. He ran the pier. Tommy, Lucas, Frank. Each name came harder than the last. Every one of them, Marcus told me, had turned. Every one of them, he stopped. He did not finish the sentence. Elena did not ask him to. The silence between them was the kind that adults fall into when the room has suddenly become too full of things a child should not hear. But the child, as it happened, had been listening to none of it. Lily had climbed back into Elena's lap somewhere during the last 5 minutes, and she had not moved since. She sat with her head against Elena's collarbone, the way a cat sits on a sunny windowsill, as if she had decided, very firmly and without asking anyone, that this was her spot now, and she was not going to discuss it. "Mommy," she said, tugging gently at the apron strap. "I have something." Elena blinked down at her. It took her a second to remember how to answer to that word. "You have something, honey?" "In my backpack." The little pink backpack was still in the booth where Damien had left it. Lily slid down off Elena's lap, crossed the floor on careful tiptoes, and came back carrying something with both hands like it was made of glass. It was a small notebook, red leather cover. The corners were soft from being carried everywhere. There was a ribbon tied around it, once blue, now gray from handling. "This," Lily said solemnly, "is the list of things I wanted to tell Mommy when Mommy came home." Damien's head came up sharply. He had never seen this notebook. In 2 years of school days and bedtimes and breakfasts, he had never once seen his daughter carry this thing. His chest did something complicated. Elena looked at the notebook. She did not reach for it. She was afraid her hands would shake. "May I read some to her, Daddy?" Lily asked. Damien had to clear his throat before he could answer. "Yes, honey. You can read some to her." Lily climbed back into Elena's lap, arranged herself carefully, untied the ribbon, and opened to the first page. Her small finger found the first line. She read slowly. Some of the words were too big for her mouth, so she sounded them out. "I lost my front tooth," she read. "Daddy put $50 under my pillow. Daddy said the tooth fairy is very rich." Damien put his hand over his mouth. "I read all of Charlotte's Web by myself," Lily continued. "Daddy cried at the end, but he said it was his allergies. I don't think it was allergies. I think he is just a little bit of a crybaby sometimes." A sound escaped Elena. Half laugh, half something else. She pressed her face into the top of her daughter's head. Lily turned a few more pages, looking for one in particular. When she found it, her small finger tapped the page. "I started ballet," she read. "Daddy came to watch me dance. He sat in the back. Uncle Marcus came too." Elena stopped breathing. Lily kept going in the same steady, earnest voice. "I don't like Uncle Marcus, but I don't know why." Very carefully, Elena said, You don't like Uncle Marcus, sweetheart?" Lily tilted her head back to look up at her. "No, Mommy." She said the word easily this time, as if it had always fit in her mouth. "He looks at me," Lily said, "the way the foxes look at the chickens. I saw it in the cartoon. The fox smiles at the chicken before he eats it. He smiles just like that." Above her head, Elena's eyes met Damien's across the table. Neither of them spoke. They did not have to. A child's instincts were an old, quiet thing, and they did not lie. Damien was the first to move. He stood up, walked 3 steps toward the window, stopped, and stood with his back to them for a full minute. The muscles in his shoulders moved once under the expensive coat. When he turned around again, his face had changed. The grief was still there, but underneath it, something harder had come back online. "You're both going to be protected," he said. "Starting now, I don't care what that looks like. Damien, I can have 6 men on this road by sunset. I can have a house in Lake Geneva open by morning. I can have the both of you off the grid by tomorrow night. And Marcus will know all 6 of those names by the time the sun comes up," Elena said quietly. Damien went still. "You move 6 men," she said, "and he moves 8. You open a house in Lake Geneva. He owns the contractor who wired the alarm. You don't just have a leak in your organization, Damien. You have a tumor, and it has been growing for 15 years. He sat back down, slowly. "Then tell me what you want me to do," he said. "Because I am not walking out of this building and leaving the 2 of you here." "Yes, you are." "Elena, listen to me." She leaned forward across the table. "You drive home tonight. You walk in that front door and you have had a long, sad afternoon at your wife's grave. You do not change anything. You do not look at him differently. You do not ask one extra question. For 1 week, you behave the way you have behaved every day for 2 years. 1 week. I keep being Ellie Harper. I keep pouring coffee. I keep my head down. In that week, you quietly move anything that matters, accounts, papers, the people you still trust. You make a list of the men who would still take a bullet for you and not for him. And Rachel gives us the last piece. 1 week, Damien. Then we end this." He studied her for a long moment. This was not the Elena he had buried in his head. This was a sharper woman. A woman who had spent 2 years learning to see in the dark. 1 week, he said. 1 week. He looked down at Lily, who had been listening with the grave attention of a small judge. Then he pushed back the booth, came around to their side of the table, and knelt on the black and white tile so that his face was level with hers. Lily, he said, I need to ask you for something very important. The most important thing I have ever asked you for. Okay, Daddy. Can you keep a secret for me? A real one. The kind grown-ups use. You can't tell anyone. Not your teacher, not Rosa, not his voice did not catch. But something in it bent not Uncle Marcus. You can't even tell him you saw Mommy's friend today. Can you do that? Lily considered this with her whole face. I know how to keep secrets, Daddy, she said. I never told you about Mommy in the dreams. Damien did not move. Mommy in the dreams? Lily nodded seriously. She comes every night, she said. She sits on the end of my bed and she sings the sunshine song. The one that goes, You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. So I knew she wasn't really gone. I was just waiting. Above her head, Elena closed her eyes. Her arms tightened around her daughter, and the tears that fell into Lily's hair did not make a sound. The sun was already low when Damien lifted Lily into the passenger seat of the black Mercedes and buckled her in himself. He did not usually do that. Usually Rosa did it, or a driver did it. Tonight he did it with his own hands, slowly, checking the strap twice, as if he needed to make sure she was real. He glanced back once toward the diner. Elena was standing just inside the door, arms folded tightly across the gray apron, watching them through the glass. She did not wave. He did not wave. They had already said the only words that mattered. He pulled out onto the 2-lane road and turned the car toward Chicago. For the first few miles, Lily was quiet. Then, without taking her eyes off the darkening fields sliding past the window, she said, Daddy? Yes, Bug. Am I going to see Mommy again? His throat tightened. Yes, he said. I promise you. But first, you and I have some work to do. Do you remember what we talked about at the diner? About the secret. About the secret. He eased the car around a slow curve, and when the road straightened out again, he glanced over at her. When we get home tonight, Uncle Marcus might be there. He probably will be, actually. Lily's small hands closed in her lap. When we see him, you have to smile at him the way you always do. You have to say hi the way you always do. You cannot tell him about the diner. You cannot tell him about the pie. You cannot tell him about the nice lady with the glasses. Do you understand me? She thought about it for a long moment. Like the school play? Damien almost laughed. It came out as something closer to a breath. Exactly like the school play. I was the second bunny. You were the best bunny. Daddy. Yes, this is the most important play of my life, isn't it? He glanced at her again. 6 years old. Winter sky eyes. Utterly, terrifyingly serious. Yes, Lily, he said softly. This is the most important play of your life. She nodded once, tucked her red notebook more firmly against her chest, and faced forward like a small soldier. The gates of the Marchetti estate opened at the touch of a button. The drive curved up through the old oaks. Lights in the windows. Rosa's silhouette moving in the kitchen. Everything, for the moment, looked the same as it had that morning. Marcus Kane was standing in the front hall. He stepped forward the instant the door opened, his face arranged into a practiced concern. Boss, where the hell have you been? I called 6 times. Nobody could reach you. I was about to put men on the road. Damien did not break stride. He shrugged out of his coat and handed it to Rosa without looking at her. I took my daughter to see her mother, he said, in a voice that was flat and cold and carefully bored. We had a quiet afternoon. I turned the phone off. Marcus's eyes cut to Lily. Lily beamed up at him. It was the brightest, most dazzling smile Damien had ever seen on her face. Uncle Marcus, she sang. I had the yummiest pie today. It had cinnamon. Daddy said I could have 2 pieces. Did he now? Marcus said, smiling down at her. He did. Lucky girl. Marcus bent a little to pat her on the shoulder, and Damien, who was standing behind them, saw it then. A thin, pale scar running down the back of Marcus's left hand, curving along the thumb. He had seen that scar 1,000 times and never once wondered about it. Basement fire. Survivor. Burns to the left hand. Age 20. The sentence from the old Belrose file rose in his memory as if someone had whispered it in his ear. Damien smiled at Marcus. It was a very good smile. He had been practicing it for 2 years. Rosa, he said pleasantly, put her to bed, would you? She's had a long day. That night, long after the house had gone quiet, Damien locked the door of his study behind him. He knelt in front of the safe behind the painting, spun the dial from memory, and pulled out a black file he had not opened since his father died. On the cover, in his father's handwriting, were 3 words: Belle Rose, known associates. He sat down at his desk and began to read. 3 days later, on a gray Tuesday afternoon, Elena walked into a small coffee shop on the edge of Lincoln Park. The place was called Mabel's. It had mismatched chairs, a chipped chalkboard menu, and one barista who never looked up from her phone. Elena had chosen it months ago, for exactly those reasons. Rachel Kim was already at the corner table, a battered messenger bag at her feet, and a black coffee in front of her. She was in her early 30s, small and sharp, the kind of woman who wrote down everything twice and trusted nobody once. "You look tired," Rachel said as Elena sat down. "I slept 4 hours in the last 3 nights. I slept 2. Elena almost smiled. Rachel glanced once at the door, once at the window, and then slid a small object across the table beneath a folded newspaper. It was a flash drive the size of a house key. "This is the last piece," Rachel said quietly. "I need you to hear it before you do anything else." Elena drew the drive into her palm and closed her fingers around it. "Where did it come from?" "A man at the port who owed me a favor. He ran audio on a boat. Victor Orlov met someone on last Thursday. The someone was Marcus." Elena's stomach went cold. "I've heard it, Ellie. Twice. I almost didn't bring it to you in person. I thought about putting it in a locker and mailing you the key. Tell me." Rachel looked at her for a long second. "Marcus made Victor a trade," she said. "He's giving Victor the Marchetti territory. In exchange, Victor gives him 2 things: protection during the transition, and the girl. The coffee shop went somewhere very far away. He's handing Lily over, Ellie, not to kill her, not right away. He wants Damien to lose her the way he lost his own family. Slowly, publicly. He wants Damien alive at the end of it. He wants Damien to see." Elena had stopped breathing. 20 years ago, Rachel continued, Marcus was the boy in the basement. He watched his brothers burn through a grate in the floor. He has waited his whole adult life to give Damien Marchetti the same view. When? On the tape, he says, 48 hours from Sunday. Sunday was yesterday. Rachel reached across the table and took her wrist. "He's taking her tomorrow." Elena was already on her feet. She fumbled her burner phone out of her coat pocket, stabbed in Damien's number with shaking fingers, pressed it to her ear. It rang, and rang, and rang. Voicemail. She ended the call, dialed again. Voicemail. "Pick up," she whispered. "Pick up, pick up, pick up." The bell over the door gave its small tin jingle. Elena's head came up. 2 men had just stepped inside. One was heavy, wearing a dark windbreaker despite the warmth of the cafe. The other was thinner, younger, with his hands pushed too casually into his jacket pockets. Neither of them ordered anything. Neither of them looked at the menu. The thinner one's eyes slid across the shop and found her. The look he gave her was not the look a stranger gives a stranger. Elena's blood went to ice. "Rachel," she said, and she did not recognize her own voice. "Back door. Now." Rachel did not ask questions. She grabbed her bag. Elena shoved the flash drive into her bra, pulled her coat tight, and slipped off the stool. They were moving toward the kitchen passage before the 2 men had fully cleared the doorway. Somewhere in the last 24 hours, something had gone wrong. Marcus knew. Marcus knew she was alive. The hunt had started. The phone finally rang as Damien was stepping out of a meeting in the downtown building his family had owned since 1987. He saw the unknown number and almost sent it to voicemail. Then he saw how many times it had already called. "Yes, he knows." Elena's voice was low, moving, breathing hard. "Damien, he knows I'm alive. And he's taking her. 48 hours. Tomorrow." He was already walking, faster, his coat half on. "Where are you?" "A cab." "I lost 2 men at Mabel's. Rachel's going under. She's staying with a source. Damien, tomorrow. Get to the river house on Kinsey. The blue door. I'll send someone for you in 90 minutes. Damien, Elena. I've got her." He hung up before she could argue, already dialing Rosa. 20 minutes later, he was on the stairs of the estate 2 at a time. Rosa had Lily dressed and on the landing before he had reached the top. She was small and calm in a dark coat, her red notebook clutched to her chest, her hair braided the crooked way he had learned to do it. "Are we going somewhere, Daddy?" "A little trip. Just you, for a couple of days. Without you?" He knelt down on the stair below her so that their faces were level. "Just for a couple of days." "Bug. There's a lady named Sarah. You remember Sarah? She used to bring you the red lollipops. She's going to stay with you. You can watch all the cartoons you want. You can eat cereal for dinner. Will Mommy be there? Not yet, but soon. Daddy is going to go get Mommy, and then we're all going to be together. I promise you. She studied him the way she had studied him in the car 3 days ago, carefully, as if she were looking for the small hairline crack in a promise. Then she held out the red notebook to him with both hands. Daddy, yes, keep this for me. He took it. The leather was warm from her arms. This is everything I wanted to tell Mommy, she said. When Mommy came home, her voice was very small. If something happens to me, Daddy, please read it to her anyway. Okay? Don't skip the pages. She has to hear all of them. Damien could not speak. Something broke in him that he had not known was still whole. He pulled her into his chest, hard, and for the first time in her 6 years of life, his daughter felt her father cry. Not the tight, controlled silence she had sometimes noticed behind a closed study door. Actual, shaking, terrible crying, the kind that takes a grown man apart. She patted the back of his neck the way she did with her bear after a bad dream. It's okay, Daddy, she whispered. I will keep the play going. Sarah Brennan was waiting in the foyer when he brought Lily down. She was in her early 40s, plainly dressed, unarmed as far as anyone could see, and she had put 18 years into the FBI before she retired. She had been Damien's only real hire of the last 2 years. The safe house on Marquette, Damien said quietly. No men outside. No cars I own. You drive. Just you. Understood. There are protocols. I remember them. He crouched down one more time. Play the play, Lily. I will. I love you. I love you, Daddy. He watched the taillights disappear through the gate. He stood there for 10 more seconds. Then he turned and walked back into the house and began, without a sound, to make the phone calls that would end Marcus Kane's life. By midnight, 11 men were standing in the wine cellar beneath the estate. They were the ones he trusted, the ones he had checked against the black file, twice. Marcus was not among them. Tomorrow night, Damien said. The warehouse on Pier 319. I bring him the meeting. You bring the guns. 11 heads nodded. Outside, the first slow rain of the season had begun to fall. The cab dropped Elena 3 blocks from Doyle's diner. She walked the rest in the dark with her hood up, watching the road for headlights that did not pass. Hank opened the back door before she had finished knocking. He did not speak. He only stepped aside, locked the deadbolt behind her, and she saw that the 12-gauge shotgun from above the pantry was leaning against the prep table, already loaded. A box of shells sat next to the salt. Margaret? Elena whispered. Upstairs. She wouldn't leave. Elena closed her eyes for a moment. They turned off every light in the diner except the small bulb over the stove. They sat on stools in the dark kitchen with their backs to the freezer and the shotgun across Hank's knees. And they waited. The clock over the soda machine read 12:17 when she heard the tires on the gravel. No headlights. Hank's hand closed on the stock of the shotgun. Ellie, he said very quietly, using the name she had carried for 2 years. If this goes bad, you get to the walk-in freezer. There's a back hatch under the meat hooks. Margaret knows. Hank, don't argue with me, child. The front door glass shattered with a sound like a slap. 4 men came through in a line, moving fast and tight, the way men move who have done this before. Flashlights swept the empty booths. The first voice was Russian. The second was American. Victor's men. Marcus had not come himself yet. Hank stepped out from the kitchen with the shotgun raised, and he did not miss. The nearest man went down before he could finish turning. Then everything was noise. A second shotgun blast. A return burst that tore through the pie case and sent glass across the linoleum like falling rain. A shout from upstairs, Margaret cut short. Elena moved without thinking. 9 years of Krav Maga in a studio off Wabash, years before she had ever met a man named Marchetti, came back into her hands like a language she had only pretended to forget. She swept a cleaver off the block as she came through the kitchen door. The first man was still clearing the booth. She hit the side of his knee with the flat of the blade, drove her elbow into his throat as he dropped, and took his pistol before he hit the ground. The second was coming around the counter. She put 2 of his own bullets into his chest at 3 feet, 2 down. Somewhere behind her, Hank was on the floor, not moving. Margaret was screaming, and then not screaming, and Elena did not have time to learn why. The third man came from the blind side. He caught her wrist as she turned, twisted, something in her shoulder tore. The pistol clattered under the counter. His forearm locked under her jaw, and he hauled her backward against the service window, and she kicked, and bit, and drove her heel down on his instep, and still he did not let go. The front door opened again. A 5th set of footsteps. Slower, Unhurried. A familiar voice said, "That's enough, Carl." The arm at her throat relaxed just enough to let her breathe. Marcus Kane stepped through the broken doorway of Doyle's diner, picking his way around the body in the entrance like a man walking past a puddle. He was wearing a gray overcoat. He was smiling. "Elena," he said warmly. "Darling, 2 years ago you were remarkable. 8 seconds before the blast. 8. I measured it on the news footage, over and over. I've had a great deal of respect for you ever since." Her mouth was bleeding. She spat on the floor and smiled back at him anyway. "Why, Marcus?" she said. "We never did anything to you." Something in his face changed. "My father," he said softly, "was buried alive by Antonio Marchetti in the summer I turned 20. My brothers burned in the cellar above him. Tell me, sweetheart, do you really think I forget?" He stepped closer. His gloved hand came up and tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear, almost tenderly. "Take her," he said. Then, without taking his eyes off her face, he lifted a phone to his ear with his other hand. "Begin phase 2, he said. "Take the girl." Across the city, on a quiet block in Marquette Park, Sarah Brennan was awake in the dark. She had been awake since midnight. She was sitting in the armchair across from Lily's bed, a paperback novel unopened in her lap, a small pistol on the side table beside the lamp. The lamp was off. The only light in the room came from the narrow strip of hallway under the door. At 12:19, she heard the floorboard in the downstairs hallway creak. It was the third board from the stairs. She had walked it twice that evening on purpose, just to know its voice. Nobody in this house should have been downstairs. Sarah was on her feet before her book hit the floor. She crossed to the bed in 3 steps, clamped one hand gently over Lily's mouth, and shook her awake with the other. "Sweetheart, eyes open. Don't make a sound." Lily's eyes opened above the hand. She did not scream. She did not cry. She nodded once. Sarah lifted her straight out of the bed with one arm and carried her to the bookshelf on the far wall. She reached behind the third shelf. A latch clicked, soft as a key turning in an old lock. A section of the bookcase swung inward on silent hinges. Behind it was a space the size of a closet, carpeted, stocked with water bottles and granola bars and a flashlight on a hook. Damien had built it 1.5 years ago. Sarah had never asked him why. She had understood. "In, honey, lock the latch. Don't come out for anyone. Not even me. Only your daddy. Miss Sarah." "Now, Lily." The small door closed. The bookshelf settled back into place with a tiny thump that Sarah would not have heard if she had not been listening for it. She had just turned toward the hallway when the bedroom door came off its hinges. The first man through was big and fast. Sarah shot him in the chest from the hip without appearing to aim, and moved sideways before the sound had finished. The second man got off 2 rounds. One of them went through her thigh. She stepped inside his guard, broke his wrist across the door frame, and put the pistol under his jaw. The third man was smarter. He came in low. He fired high. The round caught her just under the collarbone, and she went down hard against the bedpost, and her pistol skidded across the floor under the bed. She did not try to crawl for it. She stayed very still on the carpet, one arm across her ribs, and listened to her own breathing slow. The third man was not looking at her anymore. He was looking at the bed, the empty, crumpled, empty bed. He crossed to the closet, threw open the doors, swept clothes off hangers. Nothing. He looked under the bed, behind the curtains, checked the bathroom. Nothing. He yanked out a phone. "She's not here," he hissed. "The girl is not here. The bed is warm, but the girl is not here." In a black SUV 30 miles away, Marcus Kane held the phone very still against his ear. "That is not possible," he said. His voice had gone quiet in a way his men had learned to fear. "Damien only has that house. Check the closets again. Check the I checked. The bed is warm. She is not here." In the seat beside him, with her hands zip-tied in her lap and dried blood at the corner of her mouth, Elena Marchetti closed her eyes for 1 second and let herself breathe. Then she opened her eyes and began, very quietly, to laugh. Marcus turned his head. "Something funny, darling?" "You don't know Damien, Marcus." Her voice was hoarse but clear. "You've stood next to him for 15 years and you never understood him. He never has just one plan. He doesn't know how." Marcus's gloved hand came up and hit her across the face, hard. Her head snapped sideways. A tooth cut the inside of her lip. She tasted copper. When she turned back to look at him, she was still smiling. And for the first time since a little red light had started blinking under her passenger seat 2 years ago, Elena Marchetti was not afraid. Pier 319 sat at the dark end of the river, where the warehouses outlasted the men who built them, and the water smelled like rust and diesel. Damien Marchetti walked through the side door at 2 a.m. with 20 men at his back. They were spread along the catwalks before the door had closed. Rifles up, sightlines crossed. The kind of arrangement a man makes when he does not plan to leave anything to chance a second time in his life. Across the warehouse floor, the bay door at the opposite end rattled open. Victor Orlov walked in first. He was a heavy man in his 50s, gray at the temples, draped in a long black coat that had never been fashionable and never been cheap. Behind him came 15 of his own men, and between 2 of them, on her feet but not unhurt, with her wrists cinched in front of her and her hair loose around a bruised jaw, walked Elena. Damien's breathing changed. He did not let it show. Marcus Kane came in last, walking at Victor's shoulder the way a son walks behind a father he pretends to love. "Damien," Victor called across the concrete. The word rolled off his tongue. "Let us be businessmen. You bring a price. I bring your wife. A simple evening. I have a better offer, Victor." Victor's eyebrows lifted. "Is that so? I'll give you Marcus." The word carried across the warehouse like a stone skipping on water. Heads turned on the catwalks, on the floor. Marcus's face did not move at all, which told Damien everything. "He has been cheating you for 11 months, Damien said. He lifted a slim folder from under his coat and held it up. "The Pantera shipment last February. You paid him for 40 crates. He delivered 31. The 9 crates he pocketed moved through a shell in Gary, Indiana. $5 million of your money, Victor. I have the numbers, the accounts, the names of the men who signed for it." He tossed the folder. It slid across the concrete and fetched up against Victor's boot. Victor looked down at it for a long moment. Then, slowly, he looked up at Marcus. "Is this true, Marcus?" Marcus was already smiling. It was a thin, familiar smile. It was the smile of a man who had understood, 3 sentences ago, that he had been finished since the moment he walked into this room. "Victor," he said pleasantly, "he is lying." "Open the folder, Victor," Damien said. Victor bent. Marcus's hand went under his coat. From the far side of the floor, Elena caught Damien's eyes across 20 meters of dead air, and he moved one finger, and she moved her hands. She had been sliding a razor blade out of the hem of her sleeve for the last 90 seconds. The zip tie parted with a small wet sound nobody heard. She was already diving sideways before Marcus's pistol cleared his coat. The warehouse came apart, muzzle flash everywhere. Someone yelled in Russian. Someone yelled in English. A light fixture exploded. A man on the catwalk above Damien folded forward over the railing and did not come back up. Damien was already moving, running along the line of stacked crates toward the far end of the floor, toward the one thing he had come here for. He reached her behind a forklift. She was on her knees with a pistol in her hand that had belonged to someone else 30 seconds ago. Her lip was split, her shoulder was wrong. Her eyes, when she looked up at him, were very clear. He dropped to his knees in front of her and took her face in both hands. For 1 second, the war stopped for them. "I'm sorry," he whispered. His voice broke. "Elena, I'm sorry for every hour. I'm sorry for every night. I'm sorry for every single Damien. Every single thing I Damien." "Stop." She caught his wrist. Her hand was shaking. "You have 5 minutes to get me back to my daughter." Her eyes held his. "After that," she said, "you can apologize for the rest of your life." He almost laughed. Something in him cracked and something in him held. He nodded. Then he pulled her to her feet, put his body between her and the warehouse, and they moved. Damien handed Elena off to Tommy Russo at the loading door. Tommy had been his cousin's driver for 10 years and had been shot twice for this family without asking why. "Don't let her out of your sight," Damien said. "Boss either of your sights, either of your hands. She does not leave this door." Tommy nodded once. Elena caught Damien's sleeve. "Where are you going?" "To finish it." "Damien, I'll come back." "Elena, I promise you, I'll come back." He kissed her forehead once, hard and quick, and then he was moving. Marcus had gone up. There was a steel ladder bolted to the wall at the back of the warehouse. The rungs were slick with fresh blood. Damien pulled his pistol, stepped over a dying man, and climbed. He came out onto the roof into rain. It had been a light drizzle 20 minutes ago. It was something else now. A gray, hard, sideways Chicago rain, the kind that falls off Lake Michigan in sheets and makes every flat surface a mirror. Marcus was standing at the far edge of the roof, near the drop to the river. His coat was ruined. His left sleeve was dark with blood from a wound in his forearm. The small, polished pistol in his right hand was pointed at the ground. He was not running anymore. He had nowhere left to run. He was only waiting. He turned his head as Damien stepped onto the gravel. "You came alone," Marcus said. He sounded almost pleased. "I came alone. I knew you would. You always did have a sentimental streak. Antonio would have sent 10 men." Damien said nothing. Marcus wiped the rain off his face with the back of his sleeve. He looked older suddenly. Not 40. 20. A boy in a basement watching a grate. 20 years, he said. His voice was shaking, but not with fear. 20 years, Damien. I stood next to you for 15 of them. I held your children. I ate at your table. I took a bullet for you that I put there myself. Why?" His voice cracked. "Why could you not just die like your father?" "My father did a great many things," Damien said. The rain was running into his eyes. He did not wipe it away. "I won't stand here and defend him. He killed men who did not deserve it. He killed women who did not deserve it. He killed boys, Marcus." "I know. Then but my wife," Damien said. "And my daughter had nothing to do with him. They are not his account to pay. Nobody is innocent in this world, Damien." Marcus's pistol came up. "Not even your 6-year-old. Damien fired first. The round took Marcus's pistol out of his hand and most of 2 of his fingers with it. Marcus roared and came at him anyway, shoulder down, and they hit the wet roof together and rolled. It was a bad fight. Neither of them had planned it. Fists and knees and gravel and rain. Marcus got a thumb under Damien's jaw. Damien broke his nose with the heel of his hand. They fetched up near the edge of the roof, and Marcus's foot went over, and for one long second he was only holding on by one bleeding hand. Damien caught his wrist. He lay on his chest in the wet gravel with his wife's husband's last living enemy dangling 5 stories over a river, and he pulled. Marcus came up. He lay on the roof, coughing and bleeding and staring at him. "Why?" Marcus gasped. "Damien, why?" Damien stayed on his knees in the rain. He was breathing hard. "Because," he said, "I am not my father." The sirens started then, faint at first, under the rain, then closer, then unmistakable. Blue and red light climbed the far side of the warehouse and painted the underside of the clouds. Rachel Kim had made her phone call. 40 minutes later, Marcus Kane would be lifted into the back of an FBI van, alive, handcuffed, and finally, out of Damien Marchetti's house. The rain was still falling when Damien's car pulled up in front of the Marquette Park safe house just before dawn. Every light on the block was on. An unmarked ambulance was parked at the curb, its back doors open. 2 of his men stood at the front walk. One of them nodded at the car. The other was trying, badly, not to cry. Elena was out before Damien had finished turning off the engine. He caught up to her at the porch steps. Inside, the front hall was a mess of broken glass and upturned furniture. A medic was kneeling on the rug beside Sarah Brennan, who was pale and damp and very much alive. She had an IV in one arm, and her free hand wrapped tight around a gauze bandage at her collarbone. When she saw them come through the door, she tried to sit up. "Sir, stay down, Sarah. She's fine. I know, the shelter, behind the bookshelf." She didn't open it, not once. Damien put his hand on her shoulder. "Just for a moment. You saved my daughter, Sarah. I had help, sir. She's very brave." Elena was already on the stairs. They climbed together. At the top of the hallway, the door to the bedroom hung off one hinge. The carpet was dark in one long streak where someone had been dragged out. The bed was still warm and empty, and still made up on one side where Lily liked the blanket folded over twice. Damien crossed to the bookshelf and knelt in front of the 3rd shelf. "Lily," he said. He kept his voice very steady. "It's Daddy. Silence. Lily, Bug, you can come out now. It's only me and Mommy, nobody else. I promise you." A small click from behind the wood. The bookshelf swung slowly outward. A small figure stepped out into the ruined room. Her braid was crooked. Her cheeks were streaked. The red notebook was clutched against her chest with both hands, the way she had held it the first time Elena had ever seen it. She looked at Damien for 1/2 second. Then she looked past him. Her face did the thing a child's face does when the world finally agrees to keep its promise. "Mommy!" Elena made a sound. It was not a word. She went to her knees in the middle of the carpet and held her arms open. "Mommy." Lily was running now. "Mommy. Mommy. Real Mommy. Not the dream one. You're not in the dream anymore. I'm here. Baby. I'm here. You're real. I'm real. I'm real. I'm here. I'm never." Elena could not finish any sentence. She was rocking them both back and forth on the carpet, her face pressed into her daughter's hair, her hands cupped around the back of her daughter's head, as if to hold the whole world inside her palms. Damien stayed in the doorway. He did not step forward. He wiped his face once with the back of his hand and stayed exactly where he was, because some moments belong to two people, and the kindest thing a third person can do is stand very still at the edge of them. After a long time, Lily lifted her head from her mother's shoulder. She looked across the room. "Daddy," she said, "come here. Families have to hug all together." He crossed the carpet and folded himself around the two of them. The three of them knelt there on the ruined rug in a ruined room with a ruined city waking up outside the window, and none of them spoke for a long time. Then Lily said, against Elena's collarbone, "Mommy." "Yes, sweetheart. Now that you're home, can I turn the hallway light off at night?" Damien lifted his head. "The hallway light?" From the doorway, Sarah Brennan spoke quietly from her stretcher. She had been carried up. She had insisted, "Every night, sir, for 2 years." She said she had to leave it on so her mother could find her way back. Elena closed her eyes. She pulled her daughter closer. 3 months later, the city that had once belonged to Damien Marchetti was learning how to live without him. There had been a press release on a Tuesday morning, short, 2 paragraphs, signed with a single name. Damien Marchetti was announcing his formal retirement from all commercial holdings associated with his family. A distant cousin, a man named Luca Ferranti, would assume stewardship of the legitimate businesses. The rest of it, the quiet things, the old things, the things Antonio Marchetti had built in the years after the war, Damien had spent those 3 months slowly and carefully ending. He had closed them the way a man closes an old house. He walked through every room. He turned off every light. He locked every door behind him. He had been told he would not survive retirement. He had smiled when he was told this. He was still here. The family had moved into a small white house on the edge of a sleepy town 2 miles from Doyle's diner. It had a porch. It had a crooked mailbox. It had a backyard with a swing set that Damien had put together by himself over the course of one very long Saturday, and the swing set was still standing, which he considered a private, personal miracle. Elena helped the Doyles run the diner now. Hank's knees were going, and Margaret, who had taken a bullet to the shoulder in her own kitchen and survived it, had decided that at 64, she had earned the right to sit down sometimes. So Elena opened the diner 3 mornings a week. She made the apple pies herself. The regulars had started calling her Miss Elena, which she corrected to just Elena, which they ignored. Lily went to the public elementary school down the road. She walked there in the mornings holding Damien's hand, and he walked her to the corner, and she made him stop at the corner because, she explained, she was not a little kid anymore, and a lot of the other kids did not have their daddies walk them all the way to the door. No vehicle followed them. No man in a dark suit stood across the street. A golden retriever on the next block barked at them every morning, and that was the most dangerous thing that happened on the walk. One Thursday morning in October, Damien sat on the edge of Lily's bed with a comb in one hand and a very small pink hair tie in the other. His daughter sat patiently in front of him, reading a book about horses. He had been at it for 15 minutes. "Daddy." "Yes, Bug." "Is my hair going to be done by school?" "Yes." "Is my hair going to be done by lunch?" I am choosing to ignore that question. A laugh came from the doorway. Elena was leaning against the frame with a coffee cup in her hand and her bare feet on the hallway carpet. Her hair was loose on her shoulders. She was smiling the way people smile when a small, familiar moment has snuck up on them. "You need to learn a lot of things, Mr. Marchetti. I have the rest of my life to learn them, Mrs. Marchetti." Lily looked up from her book. "Can Mommy do it?" Mommy can absolutely do it. In a federal prison across state lines, Marcus Kane had been sentenced to 60 years. He had not appealed. He had stopped speaking almost entirely. 2 weeks after his arraignment, Victor Orlov had been killed in an exchange of fire with federal agents in a warehouse outside Gary, Indiana. Rachel Kim had been awarded a Pulitzer Prize for her 7-part investigation into the Marchetti bombing and what had come after. She had thanked, in her acceptance speech, a woman named Ellie Harper, who was braver than anyone knew. And here, in a small white house 2 miles from a diner that served the best apple pie in Cook County, a father was learning how to braid a small girl's hair, and a mother was laughing in the doorway, and the hallway light had been switched off for 91 nights in a row. Dear viewer, thank you for staying with this story until here. There is a quiet lesson inside it, and it has nothing to do with power or money or the size of the house a family lives in. It has to do with the fact that the most valuable thing a person can do in a life is keep the people they love safe and keep showing up and keep choosing them, even after the worst has happened. Love does not disappear simply because people are forced apart. Children, remember, a kept promise can survive 2 years in silence. And sometimes the bravest thing a grown man can ever do is walk away from the life he built with the wrong hands and build a smaller, truer one with the right ones. If this story touched something in your heart today, please take 1 second to tap the like button, share it with someone who needs to hear a gentle story tonight, and subscribe to our channel so you do not miss the stories we have coming for you. We would love to hear from you in the comments below. Did this story remind you of someone in your own life? Is there a light somewhere in your home or in your heart that you have been leaving on for someone? Tell us. We read every comment, and everyone matters to us. Wishing you good health, a peaceful heart, and quiet joy in every ordinary day ahead. Take care of yourself, take care of the ones who love you, and we will see you again in the next video. Goodbye for now.